Greetings, people of the internet. It's Scott with Serkworks. It's Friday. It's Black Friday. You know what that means. It means you should be out trampling people at the Walmart trying to get a deal on a new TV, but instead you're watching me, so thank you. And we are bringing you more Masters of the Universe. This time we're doing some villains. I'll get you, He-Man! Okay, back once again with some more He-Man and the Masters of the Universe sketch cards. This time we're going to do some villains, which, I mean, if you're a fan of He-Man, I'm sure you'd probably agree that the villains are probably a lot cooler than the heroes. Not that the heroes aren't cool, they are, but man, just I think all the really cool characters, at least the ones that I liked design wise and the toys and everything, most of them were villains. There were some cool, really cool heroes too, but I don't know. The villains just always stood out more. So what we're doing right now, we're just sketching out Beastman here. This was probably one of the first, if not the first, He-Man action figures that I owned. I mean, when I saw this guy, I was like, oh man, I got to get him. He looks so cool. Just the orange and red fur, and the armor. You had the whip, and he just really looked cool. So yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite character designs. Especially for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Of course, you see these characters, and then the way they were kind of portrayed on, in the animated series. I mean, pretty much all of He-Man's villains were, well, I mean, not, I mean, all of Skeletor's minions, including Skeletor, they were pretty much all bumbling buffoons. So, it didn't seem like much of a match for He-Man. You think you would want your villains to be a little more villainous, so they can kind of counter your hero. But anyway, uh, still very very cool designs and everything. So this is one of my favorites, and so I picked. There's so many to choose from. I'm typically sticking to like three different sketch cards per episode of Fan Art Friday. So, but there's so many, and I mean I could keep going, and I might do some more in the future. But it was really hard for me to pick which ones to do. Definitely had to throw in Beastman, and then of course Skeletor for these villains. But there's so many, and I'm also going to do Trapjaw, which that is probably like my all time. He was like he came like at the second wave. The figures came at the second wave of the He-Man toys and everything. So while Beastman was the first one one of the first ones I got. Trapjaw, once he came out, I mean that was just like still. I mean I've drawn him a couple times, like done different versions of him, and he's always fun to draw because he's just so cool. But we can talk more about him when I start drawing him. But yeah, there's so many other cool ones. Merman I didn't get to. Not Trapjaw, but Triclops. He's another cool one that kind of came with that wave when Trapjaw came out. And man, there's so many of them. I've been watching these. I forget the channel. I think the guy his name is Pixel Dan, and he does like these toy reviews, and he's got a lot of like Masters of the Universe toy reviews. And what's cool is they're still producing these figures, even though you can't find them in the stores. They're doing them like direct, just to collectors. And I kind of wish I could get in on that, but I'm so it's been so long since I stopped collecting toys and things like that it would be a lot to catch up. But it would be cool to have those toys because they just look really really cool. One of the interesting things is because when I was a kid I collected He-Man and the Masters of the Universe back when they were first released and through the Filmation thing, and it kind of stopped. And there were some other iterations. There was like the New Adventures of He-Man, which not a big fan of. It was kind of they went with a little more of the the sci-fi like space angle. Even though He-Man did have that element to it. It was always, it did take place on another planet and everything. And they had spaceships and things, but it also had this big fantasy element. But that New Adventures was quite a bit different. By that time, I was a little too old. Like I kind of, I didn't really get into it. So it took, I can't. I guess I can't say much other than the visuals for that show, but because I've never really watched it or anything. We're drawing old Bonehead right here, Skeletor. But the cool thing is, so I collected those toys when I was a kid, and then my oldest son was just at this kind of the same age, well, probably younger. I think he was a little bit younger when the Mike Young version, the 2000 era He-Man came out, which was so cool. Really just took what Filmation had established, because there's you can say a lot of negative things about the Filmation thing. A lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it, or have issues with it, but there was some cool stuff. And I think what the Mike Young cartoons did, that 2000 era He-Man, is they took basically all the cool stuff about, they didn't really change the mythology or reboot it, so to speak. I guess they sort of rebooted it, but they still kept a lot of what Filmation had come up with, some of the ideas with Prince Adam and turning into He-Man, and even characters that Filmation developed, like Orko and things, and which was never my favorite character, because I was always, anytime, whether it's a Scrappy Doo or anytime they throw in these characters that are supposed to, I guess, connect more with kids, I never really liked those, even as a kid. So that was, it didn't speak to me as a kid. So Orko was never, I was never a fan of that. But even with somebody like Orko in the newer cartoons, they kind of made him cool. They gave him, the one thing they did is they just gave everyone more backstory. They explained where Skeletor came from and gave him an origin, and went a little more in He-Man's background and some of these other characters, and just give them, like I said before, most of Skeletor's minions were just these bumbling idiots that could just be swapped out for one another with, there wasn't really anything to them. And then the new series, they kind of, they really took that mythology and built on it, and if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. I don't know if it's available streaming anywhere. At one time it was, but I've got them on DVD. I've got the first 2 seasons on DVD. I've got to get the third one, because I don't even know if I've seen all the way through the third one. But what was cool was when that came out, like I was saying, when the new cartoons came out, my son was at the age where he was collecting toys and things like that. So I kind of got to live vicariously through him. So we would go and, we'd buy the toys for him, and then I'd be like playing with with the toys with him and everything. And the new versions were just really, really cool. But the ones they're doing right now are kind of a cross, because they're the Four Horsemen. These are some sculptors. They're kind of like famous sculptors, I guess. But they did most of the sculpts for that 2000 line. And then it was kind of a bummer, because for whatever reason, they just kind of canceled the line. And it was still, my son and I were still collecting them, and we were really, and it seemed like, it was really, still like a big thing, but they just kind of stopped the line altogether. And then they just started releasing these, you could only get them at certain things, like at comic conventions, and they were kind of hard to find, especially, and they weren't really priced for like a kid to play with, which is kind of a bummer. Now they're just more for the collector's market, but they're right now they're producing these new figures, and it's kind of a cross. They're doing just a mix of everything. They'll take like characters from the Mike Young animated series, characters that they never had toys of, and they're making those, and then they're basing a lot of them off like the original He-Mans. Only it's kind of a cool homage, because they're taking what was cool about those characters, and they're kind of they're making them a little better, but they're still sort of true to the original, which is cool. So if you haven't seen any of those, if I can remember, maybe I'll put a link to that Pixel Dan channel, or you can kind of just Google him on, or do a YouTube search and find his stuff. But that's some really cool stuff. But so, like I was saying, this is Trapjaw, and he's just like, he's probably one of my favorite all time. Of not just Masters of the Universe, but any kind of entertainment property or whatever. He's like one of my favorite heroes because he's kind of like this zombie, pirate, guy with, instead of a hook, he's got these. Well, he does have a hook, but it's more like mechanical and stuff like that, and just this big arm that you can switch out parts for and everything. And he's got that little thing on the top of his head. And I remember stringing up a string and making him slide down a string through that little loop in his head when I was a kid. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with these guys. So I think they're actually working on a new theatrical like movie, like live action. So we'll have to see. They have a lot of when they take these toy properties. In my opinion, I'm not crazy about the results, but who knows? Can't be any worse than the other one they put out. So I guess I'm sort of looking forward to that. But anyway, thanks for following. Please like, subscribe, and let me know if you have any comments. And I'll see you later. And that is all.